Welcome to Kevin Deal Photography, where I take you on my journey through photography. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the announcement of the Fuji GFX100S Mark II. I'm pleased to announce that I'm launching 3 Capture One style packs: Metamorphic Portraits, The Sound of Silver, and Rangefinder. These will eventually also be available for Lightroom, so if you go to kevindealphotography.com, scroll to the bottom of the homepage, and join my mailing list, I promise I won't send you spam, but I will let you know the second these release. And now, on to today's episode. Welcome to today's episode. If you're not familiar with Kevin Deal Photography, we do gear reviews, tips, techniques, and tutorials, and sometimes we dive into film. If any of that sounds appealing to you, click the subscribe button below. So Fuji just announced that they are coming out with a 100S Mark II. This comes after the announcement of the 100 II, which I think was September of 2023. So it's been about 8 months since they announced the 100 II. And the very first thing that stands out to me about the 100S II versus the 100 II is the fact that it's about 23% less. If you were to purchase a 100S at the beginning of 2023 before it started going on sale, you would have spent $6,500 on it. And with inflation going on right now and the price of everything going up, the fact that Fuji slashed the 100S II price by 23% to me means that they are making a serious push to get people from full frame and get into medium format. Now, I do not have a 100S Mark II because it has not yet been released, and I'm definitely not cool enough to get an advanced copy, but I do have the original 100 with me. So when I talk about things with the 100S II, I'll show you this 100S and points to it as I talk about things that they put in the 100S Mark II. So looking at these new specs, I do think that Fuji is making that push to get full framers into medium format, and we'll just go through what is improved upon with the 100S Mark II versus my 100S. So they do have a new processor, the X-Trans 5 processor, whatever they call it, the X Processor 5, I think is what they actually call it. And it has, was it Reala? See, I follow football, soccer, so I think like Real Madrid, so I say Reala Ace, but maybe it's just Reala Ace. I don't know, tell me about it in the comments below, but I always say Reala Ace. They have Reala Ace in the new processor, which is no surprise. Fuji's putting it in all of their new cameras. I think the new X-T50 has it as well. 30% more dynamic range. I'm a little curious about that stat because I saw some stuff online that showed the 100 II, not the 100S II, but the 100 II versus the 100S. And they said that it was marginal at best, the differences. So I'm curious, is this the exact same sensor as the 100 II, or is it a new sensor? Because 30% more sounds a lot better, right? But in all actuality, if it's the same sensor, from what I've seen, it's not much better at all. It kind of looks like the same sensor, it just has the Reala Ace simulation in it. It's not the same sensor, don't get me wrong. There are some other things, like the fact that it has 8 stops of in-body stabilization versus 6 stops on my 100S. To me, the big improvement on the 100S is the improved autofocus. The 100S II has a new AI-assisted autofocus. Now, I don't know what the hell that means. Everybody uses AI as a buzzword. If it's actual AI, that's great. Like I know Canon with the R1 announced that like it'll do facial recognition and follow the person around. To me, that's artificial intelligence, kind of like with your iPhone when it says, oh, we have face detection. There's a bunch of pictures of the same person on your phone. To me, that's AI. Now, we'll have to see how this works in real life. But when I was at the WPPI show in Las Vegas, I did get to play around with the 100 II and its new autofocus, and I did notice a bit of an improvement over the 100S, so I'm assuming this pushes that boundary forward even more. So that's exciting news because the Achilles heel of the 100S and all the GFX family to me has always been the autofocus, and they're making a push toward wildlife photographers. So if they do want to make that serious push toward wildlife photographers, they are going to have a serious improvement in terms of autofocus. Another thing that they did to appease wildlife photographers is they took the frames per second in mechanical shutter from 5 frames per second to 7 frames per second. That's pretty cool. In electronic shutter, they've gone from 2.9 frames to 4.1 frames per second. 24 frames in RAW. One thing though you have to keep in mind is if you want to shoot 16-bit uncompressed, you can only do that in single drive mode. You cannot do that in burst mode. You have to go down to 14-bit, or you need to shoot in JPEG. So just keep that in mind if you're wanting to get this 100 megapixel camera and you want the absolute best lossless uncompressed files out there. You can't do that in burst mode. So keep that in mind. That could be a major disappointment depending on the type of stuff that you shoot. I personally shoot one shot at a time, so that wouldn't bother me that much at all. The newer body, they have that kind of grip, that newer slick looking body that you find on the 102. That material, that finish they put on the new 100S2, which looks pretty cool. However, the dimensions are exactly the same. So I'm assuming it's going to feel exactly the same, but it looks like the 100S2 is a little bit lighter. So that will be welcome for those of you coming over from the full frame world. Another noticeable thing I see with this new sensor is that when you shoot stills, the base ISO went down from 100 to 80, which is pretty awesome. And in video mode, 200 ISO used to be the lowest. Now you can go down to 100 ISO. I don't really use a GFX for video. There's a billion other cameras out there I'd rather shoot video on, but if you're interested in the video specs, I talked about them for a second. The electronic front curtain shutter is now maxed out at 8,000 instead of 4,000. That's not really that big of a deal to me. It looks like the diopter has a little bit more range, so I don't know. I have good vision. I have like 20/15 vision, so I've never really used a diopter, but for those of you who do need a diopter, it appears that they've made some improvements on the diopter for this. Looks like the viewfinder was updated to an OLED. They updated it from 3.6 million dots to 5.76 million dots, so it'll be a little easier to see with the new OLED EVF, which is awesome. But that's really the main things that they updated on it. Now, as to whether or not you should upgrade to it or whether or not you should buy it, we'll get a little bit more in depth in that. Let's talk about the things that they didn't upgrade that I think are kind of a disappointment. I still think SD cards for a 100 megapixel camera is pretty lame. I do worry about the overheating on it because I shoot with the 100S, and I actually get an overheating warning while shooting stills. I've seen other cameras give me overheating warnings while shooting like 4K 60 frame per second video, but getting an overheating warning while shooting stills is pretty crazy. I do live in Texas, full disclosure, and it does get well over 100 degrees here often in the summer, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more effort into the 100S2, and if there is some sort of a improved overheating safeguard in place, I haven't seen any announcement. I haven't seen it on the website. So if they did add that, go ahead and tell me about it in the comments, but I don't see it. So that is a concern of mine I have. As a studio photographer, I don't like to shoot in high-speed sync. I don't like the consistencies of high-speed sync. And so because we are still maintaining a 1/125th shutter sync speed, that's kind of lame in my opinion. I'd like to see that at least get to 1/60 or 1/200th of a second, because when you shoot with the studio lights on, you got those nasty fluorescents that cast green color casts, and I have to shoot with the lights on oftentimes because I have a set full of people. I have makeup artists, I have hairstylists, wardrobe stylists, and I can't, while I'm shooting tethered, have people running around my set with the lights off. So the 1/125th shutter sync speed's kind of lame. I'd like to see them make some efforts to improve that. They didn't do it with the 102 either, but that's just a gripe of mine that I have. So am I gonna get the GFX100S2? I'm probably not going to get it right away, and here's why. I already have a really badass camera. Are there things that drive me crazy about the 100S? Yes. The autofocus in it is pretty annoying. But if I were to sell this on the secondhand market right now, I wouldn't get a lot for it because the newer cameras have been reduced in price by 23%, which moves them, to about the price I could have sold this for before the price went down. And when you look at these examples, to me, I think this imagery that you see, these pictures, are perfectly fine. If you are a capable photographer, if you put this in capable hands, you're going to get great results. There's nothing wrong with this camera. If you just need to have the latest and the greatest, then okay, go get a 100S. Mark II, but if you really need the latest and the greatest, go get a 102. If you are a full framer, you're looking to come over from Sony or Canon or whatever, and I think this is a perfect time to buy, and I think the 100S2 is going to fill that need for a lot of you, because maybe you don't need to do any video-centric work. The majority of people who shoot on GFX don't really shoot video anyway, and so that was one of the disappointments to me about the 102, with it being $7,500, is I don't care about video. I shoot on a Canon R5. I'm shooting myself on a Canon R8 right now for this video. So I couldn't care less about the video features of any GFX camera. I just want a photography camera. And I think the 100S2 is going to fill that void for a lot of you who are coming over from other systems. I think that if you are looking at doing wildlife, I know that Fuji just came out with that GF500mm 5.6, and they've upped the frames per second on this to 7, which is pretty cool. I don't know if that's good enough for you, the wildlife photographer who's watching this. My conclusion is that for $5,000, if you are new and you're coming over to the GFX world, this definitely appears to be a pretty awesome camera for all of you. I would say that for people who are looking to upgrade, maybe it's worth it. For me, I'm going to wait a little bit longer. But the fact that they're reducing the price of the 100S from $6,500 down to $5,000 is a breath of fresh air in an industry where everything seems to be going up in price. That does it for today's episode. I want to thank each and every one of you for watching today. Are you going to get the 100 Mark II? I should say 100S Mark II. That is kind of confusing. Tell me about that in the comments below. And if you like this channel, I humbly ask you to click the subscribe button below. And if you're a fan of this channel, you like my opinions, you want to hear them in their more uncensored and raw versions, I highly recommend you go check out my other YouTube channel, the F11 Photography Podcast. And if you just want to hear the audio version on your commute to and from work, it's available on both Apple and Spotify. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.